In this demonstration, I'm just going to go over the criteria basically for today's assignment. I'm not going to build it on screen, but I will show you the finished result and explain the code around it. It is a lesson 5 that we're on today, so I'm just going to click on instructions for page 1. And in here, I do have the list of what's to be created, but here is a visual of what we will create for page 1. You'll have your first and last name surrounded by H1 tags, followed by an image, followed by a paragraph, followed by a list with 3 different list items, then followed by a hypertext link that will link to an external style sheet, and finally we'll end off the page with a table that has 1 row and 3 columns. Okay. I will explain the code. I actually have it into the code view for the HTML as well as the CSS. So let's start with our HTML code. Okay, so in here, the basic code, again, you can see our fundamental tags, the HTML tags, the head tags, we have a title tag. Here is the link that links to our external CSS style sheet, which you'll have to create manually and save it in your CSS folder in your root folder. Coming down to the content of the body, here's our H1, as you can see here. Here's our image, surrounded with paragraph tags just to ensure that it's on its own line. And you'll notice in here, there's an attribute called class equals. When we go over to the CSS style, you'll see a class style declared called puppy border underscore class. And that is what's dictating this border around the puppy and specifically making the bottom borderline even thicker. Okay, then we move on to this paragraph, and this paragraph is being styled, I believe, by a basic selector tag, as well as the H1 is being styled by a selector tag. And the list is also controlled by a selector tag calling up the UL tag. And then we're going to apply pseudo selectors to the link to control the 3 states: the link state, the hover state, and the visited state. And then finally, on our table at the bottom, we're going to decorate the border with a class style as well for that. And in this one, we're going to specifically dictate a unique color for each of the sides of that border, as well as dictating the border itself and the border thickness. Okay, if you need to pause on this screen to take a closer look at the code, by all means do so. Okay, but I'm going to bounce back now to here. And I do have a sort of a written list in English on what's required for your CSS. But let me just jump to the code and explain around the code. Okay, and maybe I'll just zoom up on this a bit here. So we've got a tag selector for H1. As you can see here in my declaration, I've got the property called color and the value of a color called dark violet. Same concept for my paragraphs, which is the P tag. Again, the syntax is the tag's name, which is known as a selector, the curly braces that surround the properties and their values. In this case, I'm making all paragraphs green on the page as a default. And then these next 3 declarations are what we call pseudo classes. So I've got or pseudo selectors, sorry, pseudo selectors. So I'm dealing with the specific state of the link. So this is a : link, that's the normal state. And I'm giving it 2 properties. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. So I'm giving it a color of red, and I'm giving it a text decoration of none. Here you can see an underline, but the text decoration of none will not show an underline. Then when you mouse over it, the text decoration will appear as an underline, and the color will change to violet. And if you've clicked it once, it will resort to this as a default, and these will kind of be disengaged once you click it once. It's called a : visited. I'll make the color lime in this case, and a text decoration with a line through. So you'll see a line running right through the text, and that'll be an indication that your page has already been visited. Your link has already been clicked once. Now I'm dealing with one directly for my unordered list, and I'm just giving it a color. So that's what dictates this color here. And then I have a class style, and that's to do with the border for this picture here. And if I go back to my HTML, I will show you. Let me go back quickly here. Right here, I'm declaring class equals, okay, and declaring it by the name puppy border underscore class. And that's what this dictates. So I've got the border, 5 pixels, border style solid, color orange, and then to make the bottom border line specific, I've addressed it, border dash bottom dash width colon 24 pixels. So this is 24 pixels thick. Similar properties for the what I called the cookie border ID. So I've applied this as an ID. So this starts with a hashtag. This one I use a border width to declare the 10 pixels. Border style again, solid. And then specifically addressing each side of the border. So you see border left color, border top color, border right color, and border bottom color. And I've just addressed them with some simple color definitions here. And then finally, for page 2, I've got this style. So let me actually go out and click on page 2. So we really just added this particular class for page 2. So this isn't applying on this page. Okay, so let me click back here, and here are the instructions for page 2. Okay, so here's the HTML code. All I'm having you put in here is your H1 and this image, and you're going to create that extra class style to put a red border around this image. Now this image actually is a good explanation of the syntax for creating the CSS code. Okay, so let me actually go to my HTML code really fast. It's not a whole lot here, but the important thing on page 2 is to add the link to your existing style sheet, and that goes inside of the head tags, and it is a single link tag. Here's my href attribute, which is the pathway to my CSS file. Make sure your file name matches, okay? Don't necessarily copy what I have. Make sure your file name matches what you have. And here are the other 2 attributes that are required for this to work. The relation attribute, rel, equals style sheet, and the type attribute equals text/CSS, both, of course, in quote marks. Then for the content, there's my H1. So again, once this is connected, your H1 tags will automatically pick up the style attributed to that tag selector. And then down below, I've got a paragraph surrounding a link tag, or actually an image being surrounded by link tags surrounded by a paragraph. So there's really 3 nests. If I go to the middle, here's my image, and of course the attribute linking to the pathway. I have declared a width of 500 expressly, and then of course I've declared my class equals, and this is what ultimately creates the red border. And that's also inside of link tags, and I want you to link that image back to your index page. So I should be able to click that image, go back to my image. And just to formalize it and put it on its own line, I surrounded it with paragraph tags, as you see here. And that's it. There's really just the 2 elements between my body tags, as you see here. Okay. And once you're done all that, you can zip up your root folder and hand that in to Canvas. So that's the basic rundown of today's exercise using HTML and CSS code to create a very simple 2-page website.